Hey guys, thank you so much for having me. I'm David Fay, and what I do is assemblage art. So assemblage art is taking old objects and putting them together into a piece and making it new. Art has always been a big part of my life. Ever since I was young, I always enjoyed doing projects and making things, and pretty much with whatever I had in the house is what I used. Not really big on going out and buying things if I had the stuff to make the piece at home. So I always did that, but all the pieces of art that I did, I gave away to friends, family, stuff like that until probably about 2012. I was taking care of a dear friend of mine who had Lou Gehrig's. He passed away the same time as my father and my best friend. I kind of went into a depression, and thank God I had the art things, and I started working on art pieces. And after, I guess, a crisis in my life and depression, and locking myself away for about a year and a half, almost 2 years, and not going out and seeing people, my friend was opening a pub, and he asked me if I would cover some chairs for him. And I had all these ribbon spools left over, and I had them sitting in the center of the table. And when I walked by, I said, wow, that really looks like a clock. And so I started working on the piece, and it was called A Bird Song Forgotten in Time. And I took it down to the Arts Factory here in Las Vegas. The Arts Factory is at 107 East Charleston in Maine. Great place. I call it my Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. It's my world of pure imagination. It's magic down there. The people I've met, the whole entire experience has been phenomenal. I started off at Jana's Red Room. I brought down the piece to put it in my friend's pub, and Jana Lynch came in and saw it, and she said, Dave Fay, you need to put that in my gallery. And I was like, really? And she said, yes. And she says, what do you want for it? I said, I don't know, $99. She says, $99? You mean like $999? So that's how the whole thing got started. And the crazy thing is, she had me bring down 3 pieces that weekend, and 2 of the pieces sold, and I was flabbergasted. So that started my assemblage art, and I continued doing the artwork I've always done, but now I was making money with it. And then about, I'd say, 1 year into that, I had this desire to start working with metal sculptures. And believe it or not, my education came from YouTube. YouTube is an amazing thing that we have today. Online social skills, it's like you just go and put in whatever you want, and there's a video for it. There are manuals, there are how-tos, there are great ideas to get. And so I went out, bought a welder, and a little Harbor Freight, $99 welder, and that's how it all started. The first thing I made was a rocket, and that rocket is now over at Tony Shea's downtown at Ferguson's. So the one thing I found is that each of these projects that I work on, each art piece, I think the more simpler I think it's going to be, the harder it turns out to be. And the ones that I think are going to be harder turn out to be easier. It's never goes the way that I plan it, but the time periods are pretty much different on them. Take, for instance, the Tin Man behind me. I've done 3 Tin Man, but this one was for the 80th anniversary of The Wizard of Oz. And I wanted it to be special, and I kind of wanted it to be a funny little piece. A lot of my work, I like to make people smile. So this piece and this Tin Man is based on a little story I came up with, that the Tin Man really liked the ruby slippers, and basically Glinda writes him a note and says, did you really think I'd let that little brat leave Oz with them? And she gives the Tin Man the slippers, and so he's actually standing in front of the Emerald City mirror with the little gift box from Glinda, and it has a letter from her, and he's actually in the ruby slippers, which are individual little squishy crystals. So it ended up going from this small little piece to be this kind of complicated piece with all these little details, and it took probably about 2 weeks longer than the other 2 Tin Men I have done. So I'm not really good with, deadlines. My inspiration comes from, a lot of the art pieces are from things from my childhood. My Aunt Essie lived on a really large estate in upstate New York, and she had this huge garage with limousines down on the bottom of it and old checkers. And there were probably about 12 cars in the garage. And up above it was this attic. And there were the most amazing things up there. My first zoetrope I ever saw was up there, and it was a little carousel, and you'd go like this and spin it, and as it spun, you'd look at the little mirror frames in the center, which actually is a practice cinescope, not a zoetrope, but you would see the little horse start to gallop, and I was fascinated by that. And one thing I've noticed as I've grown up is younger kids don't know those things that were so I guess, common to us when I was a child. I mean, even though they were from my aunt's time and period, which is way further back than mine, they're fascinating. And I noticed that a lot of younger people come in or older people come in and recognize the old toys, the old statues or things that you could play with that were of intrigue and like a zoetrope. And it makes them smile, and like to see somebody come in and pick up a piece of my work and smile, that's what I do it for. That's what makes me happy. I've got a piece that I started on in November that was supposed to be released on April 1st, but because of the COVID virus, that opening was canceled. So I can't talk about that piece, but it's coming soon. It's probably one of my biggest, largest pieces I've done so far, and it's actually one of the first human forms I've done. But besides that, the piece that kind of did it for me and launched me and everybody started to take notice of me was called Poseidon. It started off as the Yellow Submarine for the tribute to the Beatles Magical Mystery Tour I was doing. It was my first gallery show that was based on a theme, and I did 8 pieces, and one of them was the Yellow Submarine. And the day before the show, a big wind came through the backyard and knocked over the umbrella, which knocked the submarine off my work stand and onto the ground. And I thought to myself, you know what? I've got 7 other pieces that are great. I'll put those in. And I've got a month to work on this piece while the show is going. And that's all I'm going to concentrate on. And it turned out to go from the Yellow Submarine to this big, amazing piece that I just fell in love with called the Poseidon. And it was a butane tank. And the front was a moped light. And in the end, the final piece projected water lights out onto the wall and onto the floor so you could see the ocean. And then in the side, in the portholes, were animations that I did, were about 2,228 frames of animation, which you could see the inner workings of the submarine. And then on the top, it had a diffuser so you could put whatever fragrance you wanted in it, oil-wise, and it put the steam into the air. It's probably one of my most favorite pieces. And the crazy thing is, it was the first time I showed a piece at the Arts Factory that I was sitting talking with a friend, and I said, why are all these people standing around the gallery? And he said, they're not standing around the gallery, they're standing in line to see your piece. And I was like, oh my God, I was blown away. So it's been an amazing experience. The skill sets needed to do this vary. The welding, how do I want to say this? The mechanics of welding the piece together, or putting it together with solder, or screwing it together, or pop riveting it, it varies. But all these things I didn't know 3 years ago. I really was not that good at any of it. And like I said, I had a lot of people in the art world here in Las Vegas just be overextending with their generosity of teaching me things and showing me new ideas and skills on how to work with the pieces. So it's been a lot of like interacting with people and getting out there and networking, but the big majority of it has been YouTube. I can't say enough about YouTube, and it's probably out of all my applications that I have, it's one of 3 that I pay for, and it's so worth it. No commercials, and it just skips from one. If you pick out a topic, it just stays on that topic, and hundreds of videos out there. Everybody's done a video on anything you could possibly want. So guys, thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it. This has been a lot of fun, and I'm so glad I was able to share my work with you. my goal is to make people smile, and that's what it's all about for me.